Greetings, dear viewers. Anthony Mars Jr. on Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film with a new edition of the Terra podcast with episode 328, presented by my Morphin Megaverse Power Rangers Facebook group. Haven't joined? Check it out now. Well, basically, I've been wanting for this to happen for quite some time for a lot of people who have been following how I felt about Power Rangers' current stance on a certain network, and it's finally come to pass as 2021. For those who didn't know, that even back when I even did my Nickelodeon Sucks episode of the podcast series, that Power Rangers will still remain on Nickelodeon through 2021 according to a contract that Saban had already made before Hasbro took over the franchise from Saban as of 2018 and 2019. So the contract has finally come to an end as we've reached the end of the contract. You know, I have to admit, it's been a long time coming, because for the last 10 years I had to drudge through what Nickelodeon had done with Power Rangers. At least we've had a substantial network for Power Rangers to remain for a certain long period, let alone being from 2011 when Samurai aired all the way through right now 2021 with Dino Fury's first and only season. It's also been confirmed that the first season of Dino Fury, accordingly, if you heard about the update about Power Rangers' stance being on Nickelodeon through 2021, that also according to Hasbro's Fan First Friday and what they want to do with Power Rangers going forward, that Dino Fury's first season is going to be the final Power Rangers series to air on Nickelodeon as of this year. But Dino Fury will continue, however, through Netflix. So Netflix is going to take over Dino Fury for the second season coming up in 2022. But though, considering that most of the majority of all the bulk of the other Power Ranger seasons, such as Zeo all the way through Dino Supercharge, had already been removed from Netflix earlier this year. Okay, so with all that being said about this, how do I feel about this delicately? Now, I don't want to be rude and brash about this because knowing how I felt about Nickelodeon over the last 10 years, it had been airing Power Rangers. But I have to realize that while Power Rangers has been on Nickelodeon for a long, long time now, since 2011. 10 years is pretty much the contract. That was it. But if Saban still had Power Rangers to this day, then next thing you know, my biggest fear was back in 2017 or so, if Saban was the Saban brand up until through 2024, or in every 4 years through like 2028, something like that. But now that prediction has ceased and desist and come to pass, that things was going to play out completely differently, because a lot of the contractual stuff that Saban set up for Power Rangers following the reacquisition of the franchise from Disney, but then now with Hasbro taking over the entire franchise, things were going to play out differently and things were starting to shift. So several of the things Saban made contracts with Power Rangers and other companies to take over certain fields with it, like Netflix and their streaming deal of the franchise, and Shout Factory and Lionsgate with some of the DVD stuff and whatnot, that stuff was going to cease by the time Hasbro was going to take over, because given Hasbro wants to do something totally different with Power Rangers, because Hasbro doesn't have the same contract that Saban set up for most of these companies following the discontinuation of most of the contracts that Saban had with Bandai and Netflix and Shout Factory and Lionsgate, and as well as Nickelodeon itself. I bet some of you out there were probably glad that Power Rangers is finally coming off Nickelodeon, and I for one am kind of glad, but kind of also a little bit indifferent about it, because knowing I was one of those, knowing me people, and like several of you out there just like me, I was not really into what Nickelodeon has been doing with Power Rangers for the last decade since Samurai, because while this time with Power Rangers may have been polarizing for some, but there have been plenty of fans that actually liked that Nickelodeon's run with the show, with the 2 seasons, 20 episodes, and even if the hiatuses can be much of a drag because, you know, kids are out during the summer, and we're always doing what we're doing at this time now during the summer once school gets out, and, you know, once kids get out of school and stuff, and then we go on vacation at beaches and stuff, amusement parks or whatever we do during the summer, until once we get close to near the end of August, then we think about, getting ready to go back to school and work and stuff, and football season, and, you know, what have you, all the time, every year. But, you know, I really felt that I really missed, you know, I'm really going to miss Power Rangers being on Nickelodeon, but a part of me just felt like I don't miss it being going to be off Nickelodeon at all, because I wasn't really fond of how they've been handling the show, and based on the contract that Saban and Hasbro both had to follow with these newer seasons of Power Rangers every 2 years, over the course of 10 years now, to have them being split off as 2 seasons and then 20 episodes every 2 years for the 2 seasons of the newer teams. But knowing we only have, as of, you know, Dino Fury in 2021, we only have 6 different Power Ranger teams that had ran over the course of every 2 years. Samurai was 2 years, Mega Force was 2 years, Dino Charge was 2 years, Ninja Steel was 2 years, Beast Morphers was 2 years. But as for Dino Fury, it's only half a year. So it's actually 5.5 Power Ranger teams whose seasons spanned over every 2 years, with the latter currently slated for season 2 being a Netflix exclusive. But to break it to you people though, but as much as I mind Netflix doing more, handling with Power Rangers, unless if Hasbro wants to renew wants to do a new contract with Netflix, to keep Power Rangers going on Netflix and bring back the previous seasons they removed. But unfortunately, I feel like with most of the majority of all those seasons gone off of Netflix, well, like I said before, I'm not worried about it, because I already have most of the majority of the DVDs to most of those seasons, well, except for Mighty Morphin and Samurai through Ninja Steel, but until when I get those seasons on DVD. But there's possibilities that with Power Rangers moving to Netflix for new episodes, but the older episodes of Mighty Morphin, and as well as, you know, the 2 seasons of Beast Morphers remaining, that's saying so because I wish that they should have never let go of Hasbro should have never had Netflix let go and put an expiration date on when is the contract with Netflix was going to expire for most of the majority of the Power Ranger seasons, knowing that they were going to let most of the majority of all the seasons of Power Rangers, as well as Saban shows that Hasbro doesn't really own complete full rights to, like Beetleborgs and VR Troopers on the platform, to let go, but just only keep some of the following remaining. The only half of the Power Rangers, like, you know, Mighty Morphin and Beast Morphers, which Beast Morphers being the reason, and Mighty Morphin being the iconic and, you know, the most popular iteration, of course. But and again, I stopped watching Netflix 4 years ago in 2017 after I was watching Iron Fist, because at that time I wasn't watching Defenders and The Punisher when they came on Netflix in late 2017, because again, I only had Netflix for only 3 months, from February through April of 2017 up until somewhere in early May. That's when they cut my subscription off, because I only did 3 months of Netflix in 2017 because I wanted to watch VR Troopers and revisit Big Bad Beetleborgs and a little bit of, you know, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers by the time of the release of the 2017 movie. But the thing is, I haven't been watching Netflix a whole lot with most of their any other content that's on there, like licensed movie and TV content, as well as their original programming, film and television and documentaries. Well, what prevented me from watching Netflix further on now is because there were, some specific pieces of content that I refused to look at because that content is very, disparagingly polarizing. Anyway, but the thing is, that's probably why I stopped watching Netflix. And not only that, when Marvel's Iron Fist came out, I stopped watching Netflix since, because Iron Fist, compared to Daredevil, Luke Cage, and Jessica Jones, Iron Fist was a major bore and the disappointment of a first season. Although when I heard it came back for a second season, and when I heard that season 2 was an improvement over season 1 of Iron Fist, Iron Fist got better by the second season, but then only for it to get canceled afterwards. And I had already long stopped watching Netflix since, because I knew I was going to miss out on some Marvel stuff, and also knowing that Marvel was already on the verge of the end of its third phase with Infinity War Endgame, and then most of these shows had to be opted off by the end of the third phase, and with the launch of Disney Plus and all of the majority of Marvel's content from Netflix and stuff being on Disney Plus, that's probably why I think I needed to let Netflix go. And I pretty much only watched Netflix mostly for Marvel material and Power Rangers. On occasion, some movies that came out in theaters, like Zootopia and Finding Dory, and some other films that were just released in theaters. So, therefore, though, Netflix is not really my go-to for Power Rangers all that much anymore. And after I heard about them removing most of the majority of all those seasons on DVD, given that Samurai is already hard to get on DVD, while Megaforce through Super Ninja Steel remain the same still in stock on DVD and Blu-ray. But, again, I just don't know how I feel about Dino Fury remaining on Netflix for all of season 2. I don't know how Netflix is going to pad out the episodes. I don't know if Netflix will do, like, let's say the first 10 episodes of season 2 for the spring, and then go on a hiatus and have Netflix put out whatever new original movie and TV show thing, and then Dino Fury's next batch of episodes will be out in the fall, and I think that's probably how they'll probably do it. And then whatever Hasbro will do for their next Power Rangers after Dino Fury, given with all the rumors and speculations about them no longer doing no more Sentai adaptations, and also whatever I wish would have been the next Sentai to adapt for the 30th anniversary Power Ranger series. Unfortunately, we don't know what they're going to do, but I'm going to find out when we get to 2022. But backtrack to Nickelodeon. When they were doing Power Rangers. Basically, when Nickelodeon was airing Power Rangers, I really hated how they've been handling the show, like I said before. I remember back when I even heard about Nickelodeon airing Power Rangers, because, again, I guess I have to renounce a wish, again, making a reference to Wonder Woman 1984, for those who didn't see that movie, about, once you made a wish and then it, and then when it goes awry, then you have to renounce it. That, I'm going to regret ever predicting one day that if Power Rangers, back when Fox Kids was still a thing, that I kind of wish that if Power Rangers was on Nickelodeon. If there was a time if Fox Kids, again, was nowhere to be around anymore, and Power Rangers would have to substantiate somewhere. But again, at least, when we had Fox and Disney airing Power Rangers during those respective eras, that at least we had Power Ranger content during those eras and during those years. So, and then by the time Disney left us in a dark cliffhanger after RPM, and hadn't if RPM was the end of Power Rangers 11 years ago, 12 years ago, sorry, we could have still had what Disney could have done with Samurai and Megaforce, but no, they figured, no, it's best let them go, because, again, knowing how Disney was, they treated Power Rangers as a, whatever kind of thing, do a few more seasons of this thing and kill it, and then focus more on Marvel and Star Wars, and look how Marvel and Star Wars has been handled under the hands of the Disney Empire. But as soon as Haim Saban and his company came back, now known as Saban Capital Group and Saban Brands, until that's been disbanded, and and then they bring Power Rangers back from Disney and they put it on Nickelodeon because, well, I remember, again, I said this time and time again, that when I first heard that Power Rangers was going to come back, but this time on Nickelodeon, I was excited. But that was when I was 17 going on 18 years old at the time. But as soon as they also announced Samurai as the next true 18th season of Power Rangers, because that 2010 reversion was just ancillary. But by the time Samurai happened 10 years ago, I was very disappointed with the tonality and the change of the tonal shift of the series, where everything starting with Samurai has to be a harkened callback to Mighty Morphin. I think most of this was all Saban's idea, and even Hasbro's following pursuit of it. But we'll see what happens, what Hasbro will do with Power Rangers for the 30th anniversary after this long-running iteration since Nickelodeon started airing comes to an end with Dino Fury Season 2. But I just feel like all of the harkened callbacks they've done to Mighty Morphin over the last 10 years, come next year will be 11 though, it's been like, how many times did we have to keep going back to that square one, day one sort of, harken callback with these newer seasons? And that's probably why I realized that as time progressed with Megaforce and Dino Charge and Ninja Steel, although I didn't watch it when it was airing, and Beast Morphers, and now Dino Fury's doing it, I just felt like, man, we've been doing the Go-Go Power Rangers, Morphin Time callback, Bulk and Skull homage, comic relief callbacks and stuff, villains trying to be like Rita and Zeta, how petty they were, callbacks, and then some of the cheesy, campy, such dialogue callbacks from like Mighty Morphin. This is alley of campy, cheesy, childish acting, but just worse and downplayed and downtoned for the new generation of kids and such watching. And I just felt like, I feel like this past era Power Rangers just wasn't for me. But yet I watched Samurai and Megaforce and a little bit of Dino Charge when it initially aired until, by the time it came back from its hiatus in the summer of 2015, watched at least 3 more episodes in broadcast, because at that time, due to my personal circumstance at the time in 2015, late 2015, I had been discontinued from watching any more Power Rangers and other broadcast television in October 2015 with satellite TV, because during most of October and all of December of 6 years ago, I was dark and I had to move to this apartment and stuff, and then I had to figure out some other means to watch Power Rangers now by the time of Dino Supercharge. And then Ninja Steel happened. Well, again, I said I was not going to watch it when it was going to air, and when it was airing and the toys were out, and then the movie came out, and then Super Ninja Steel happened, the 25th anniversary, and then the big shakeups with Saban and Bandai all quitting, and then Hasbro comes in with Power Rangers as of now, since 2 years ago with Beast Morphers, and then all this other development. And here we are, fast forward to 2021. It's like, these last 10 years of Power Rangers, I just don't know what to think of it. It was a very polarizing time for me as an adult fan. And I didn't like the way how, following the contract that both Saban and Hasbro had to fall under with Nickelodeon, is that they had to do the show for a much more younger demographic. And that was another thing I didn't like about these last 10 years of Power Rangers being on Nickelodeon, because given that by the time Samurai happened, I was already 18 years old, but I was actually 18 since September, 6 months or so before Samurai aired in the following February of 2011, 10 years ago. And by the time I graduated high school around this time 10 years ago, but then as I began the rest of my life, by the fall and when Samurai returned with its next batch of episodes, and then holiday hiatus, and then 2012 came along, Super Samurai started airing, process repeated, I just didn't like how Power Rangers was starting to progress. Maybe I became one of those Power Ranger fans, and again, I'm not the only one, where I was kind of one of those fans who was so hung up on the past with the original Saban era, not much on the Disney era. I started to have more respect and more appreciation of the Disney era until by around Dino Supercharge and Ninja Steel. But when it was Samurai through Super Mega Force, I was still hung up on more often on the original Saban era more than anything, because knowing me, I grew up on the original Saban era when it was Mighty Morphin through Wild Force. And yes, I'm going to count Wild Force as a Saban season, even though Disney technically did half of the season, mostly for the second half of Wild Force. But Ninja Storm was really their real first season. But I really didn't like how Saban's new era was handled compared to how I liked the stuff they did in their original era. Because, there was just something magical about that era, because again, I grew up on the era. I grew up watching Mighty Morphin through Wild Force, and because there were some things they did, while I have to admit, looking back on them old episodes now, I've just realized that while those episodes may be memorable and nostalgic and iconic and stuff, all the stuff that happened during those seasons of Power Rangers, like White Light, The Wedding, Ninja Quest, Passing the Torch, Countdown to Destruction, To the 10th Power, Power of Pink, and every single episode Time Force and Wild Force had done, like Reinforcements from the Future, Time Force's finale, The End of Time and stuff. I just realized I was a bit very nostalgic for that period, even though there have been some moments in the original Saban era, like, again, the Ninja Turtles crossover and Power Rangers in Space. And even, again, Trakeena's Revenge and Lightspeed Rescue that I didn't like. I mean, I got to admit that there were some things in the original Saban era that still pains me today, but that doesn't mean I rather prefer the newer seasons and think the newer stuff are better. I mean, people are entitled to like what they like. I'm entitled to like what I like too when it comes to Power Rangers. But I just felt like my elitist gatekeeping fanboyism has made me so hung up on the past when we had these newer seasons. And made me realize, I have gotten a bit old, have I? But I won't be old until I'm like, 40 and 50? Plus, another thing I didn't like about Nickelodeon, going back, tying to this current tangent, when it comes to about how they were catering to the much younger audience. But given now that a lot of the kids that watched Samurai 10 years ago have now grown up, and basically, over the 10 years since then, and when I was entering adulthood, they've been treating Power Rangers like, what is this? Like Nick Jr.'s Power Rangers, where they're mainly aiming toward that 2 to 5 year old demographic. Those little kids that were like almost near the age of first grade kind of demographic, having, also around the age of finger painting. That's probably one of the reasons why the majority of the storytelling and the acting and the direction of those seasons were very minuscule and mediocre. And I just didn't really like how they did those seasons, because they were treating them like I'm watching a Nick Jr. version of Power Rangers or a Playhouse Disney version of Power Rangers. Well, no one, I'm way too old for that stuff. And I'm way too old to be watching that little kid stuff that was on Nick Jr. back in my day, like Blue's Clues and Dora the Explorer and whatever. But I don't understand why the heck did these newer seasons felt like that. No wonder whenever I was watching and rethinking back to Megaforce and Super Megaforce, even no matter how they were trying to raise the stakes with the Megaforce Rangers' incoming threat with the Armada during the Super season, that they were trying to make the stakes higher with the biggest invasion that we could have had for the 20th anniversary. but they treat it like it's just any other ordinary threat against, evil threat against Earth and the Rangers. Nothing more. Plus, not only that, I just didn't like how over the 2 years up until Super Ninja, every 2 years up until Super Ninja Steel, that, I hated that according to the contract that Saban had with Nickelodeon, back when Saban still had Saban had Power Rangers, that every 2 seasons, the second season is called Power Rangers Super something. Well, thank God with Hasbro for their every 2 seasons for Beast Morphers and Dino Fury going forward. We don't need to have that super season stuff anymore, because all it is just the second year of new episodes. But sure, yeah, they get a new Megazord or 2 during the second year, a new power-up, a Battleizer for the Red Ranger, possibly a few new villains or 1 new villain for the new half of the season. But it's just the same series, but just ran over 2 years because, again, Nickelodeon is very, how they are with their contracts and how every show must be 2 years and stuff. No wonder that's why most of the majority of a lot of the stuff that Nickelodeon puts out for their shows, even back when shows like Rugrats and Hey Arnold and them were on the air back then, and even in Fairly Odd Parents and them, and Jimmy Neutron, they would prolong these shows to keep airing because Nickelodeon doesn't like having all their having a whole bunch of episodes out at once for their shows, and then when these shows come out on DVD and streaming services, and even I bet you if I go on Paramount Plus and find some of those old Nickelodeon shows that I used to watch back in my childhood, I bet you that those episodes for some of those Nicktoons and stuff were only 13 episodes a season or 20 episodes a season. Because, again, that's the rule, because Nickelodeon is a cable network. Because compared to, back when Power Rangers, from my generation, when Power Rangers was on Fox and then later the Disney seasons, that they would have 40 and 30 episodes a season. Okay, so another tangent. Another tangent I didn't like. I didn't like the what's another thing I didn't like about these newer seasons for the last 10 years. I didn't like the time slots. The time slots that they had for these seasons. I remember back when Samurai first started airing back 10 years ago. Does anyone remember when Power Rangers, when it first started on Nickelodeon in 2011 around Samurai, that the time slot was Sundays at 1. And I'm just like, why Sundays at 1? Knowing that, Sunday is usually the day where people are always, people get, for those who believe, depending on whatever religion people believe in, I believe in Christianity, that people would get up first thing in the morning, go to church on Sundays until noon, and have some breakfast, lunch or so, depending, and then you come home from church on Sundays, spend at least 3 or 4 hours doing whatever, and then in the evenings of Sundays you prep up for the week, school and work and stuff. So why did they put Power Rangers on Sundays at 1 around Samurai? And that really baffled me. But luckily, they decided to put the shuffle that schedule with the newer episodes, starting with Super Samurai being on Saturdays at 12 or 12:30, depending on the time slot. And I do remember when Super Samurai aired 9 years ago in 2012, that Nickelodeon would start airing Power Rangers, starting with Super Samurai around Saturdays again, but this time Saturday afternoons at 12 or 12:30. And up until around Super Ninja Steel, that's when they've been doing it. So that's been the longest time they were doing that time slot. By the time Hasbro started doing their current era Power Rangers, starting with Beast Morphers 2 years ago, then they decided to put the show back on Saturdays, this time at 8 o'clock in the morning. But knowing, again, I'm not a Saturday morning person like I was, because again, realizing I'm a grown ass man now, I don't get up around 8 in the morning to watch Power Rangers, and also I don't have cable and satellite anymore. Okay. So, but knowing I got the internet now, and and then when that episode had aired, and then when someone uploads those episodes up to Daily Motion or something, I'll watch what happened this past Saturday's new episode and see what I thought about it. And then there you go. Or just wait until when the whole season is over, and then once all those episodes are uploaded onto like something like Daily Motion or something, then I would watch the whole season and see how it went down. So, but now with Dino Fury being the final nail of the coffin for Power Rangers on Nickelodeon, so this means that Dino Fury's the last season to air on Nick with this kind of contractual obligation. But since the contract has expired, that means, well, and also for those who are wondering on Nickelodeon's website, if you go on Nickelodeon's website, when it comes to shows that are currently on Nickelodeon, you don't hardly see not one. If you look at the site real quick, if you go on nick.com, you don't see no character representing Power Rangers Dino Fury on the site, because it's a sign that Power Rangers' time on Nickelodeon has finally came to an end. So therefore, because it was time. It was about goddamn time, because, I may have really been harsh on Nickelodeon for the last 10 years with Power Rangers, but man, heck, even the way how they've been lacking further promotion for these seasons. But the only time we had a bunch of promotion for a season in this last 10 years was with Samurai's first season, because Samurai was the first season of the era and the first season to air on the network. So when Samurai happened, yeah, I remember, 10 years ago, I remember the big, heavy, aggressive marketing campaign push for Samurai. Sure, as much as I may have not liked Samurai in its 2 seasons, but yet, if it weren't for Samurai, Power Rangers wouldn't be right where it is right now, thanks to those newer fans, the younger audience that put Power Rangers back on the map, and for us older fans to find out that, yeah, Power Rangers is still going on. Well, for me, I never forgot about it. I still kept on going with the show, even past while people my age and older were moving on to something like, after they grew out of the show around like end of Zeo, early Turbo, and then they moved on to Stuff in Life, and then they find out, and then for some people that have kids now, and then find out Power Rangers is still going on. Because, that's the thing with my generation and older. And so, yeah, so that's a lot of things to talk about, because, I really wanted the contract to end at some point, because, man, it's just some of these contractual obligations they did with Power Rangers kind of sucked. And that's why I was one of the few fans that was a little angry, and, I was very cynical and passive aggressive about the stuff, what is it? The obligations in the contract with Nickelodeon to do this. And, I don't know what's going to happen now with Netflix, doing newer seasons of the show, but I don't know, maybe probably do 2 seasons and 20 episodes on Netflix every 2 years also, but I don't know how that's going to go down. So I think I've said my piece about this, but I don't know if there was at least one positive thing about the Nickelodeon's run with Power Rangers. But I think I have to admit that at least that Power Rangers had a new network to rely on with putting on keeping the show alive, and also the younger fan base that helped Power Rangers come back into the public consciousness. Even regardless with all the throwbacks to MMPR and everything being like Mighty Morphin nowadays, well, I'll talk more about that another time, but at least we have the franchise still thriving, even though Disney may have gave up on Power Rangers, but at least we still had a substantial network, essentially, to keep the franchise going for another 10 years or so. So there's that. And also, with all the stuff going, and also a new fan base, and also making the franchise somewhat relevant again, but things have been pretty niche-like with this franchise. While Marvel and Star Wars and DC and everything, Transformers were thriving with so much mainstream popularity and even stuff that was on TV at the time. I wish I could say more, because I also, by the way, had to re-record what I said. I hope this goes through also, because my original recorded version of this didn't get saved, so hopefully this recording went through. So what do you guys feel about Nickelodeon's contract with Power Rangers finally over, and also with the situation with Netflix currently with Power Rangers? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'm getting tired. I gotta move on. I'll see you guys next time with a new video in this video series of the podcast. Be sure to subscribe, drop a like, share this video with your friends, and I'll see you guys next time. Anyway, thanks for watching.